Good morning, everybody. And first of all, I must just thank Surfrider and Tony very much for bringing me over here. This is an absolutely fantastic opportunity, and I hope that what I have to say will be of interest to people here. My subject is connecting to nature through surfing. It's quite a broad subject, and all of us as surfers are aware of this and talk about it in our own ways. I'm going to talk about how I linked with the Wilderness Foundation and how ideas developed with the wilderness people of using the sea and the world that we value as surfers for the community as a whole and for societies as a whole. So I'm going to talk about how the ideas developed and then how the ideas were put into practice with an education program that I developed in Cape Town. And then I'm going to end with a few ideas for what we can do going forward into the future. First of all, I grew up in a scientific family, so we were always aware of all the life along the coastline, and it's quite amazing. You go down to any beach and any rocks, doesn't matter how much sewage there is or whatever there is there, and there's still an abundance of life. So I was always aware of this from a young age, and we worked with it. That's just a picture of a feather star, and in the feather star you see there's a little shrimp there, so you just can't stop seeing things the closer you look at all these seaweeds and things. It's just overflowing with living animals. I went to sea when I was 19 years old, and there was something interesting about the seagoing lifestyle where people are at the mercy of nature all the time. I found that amongst surfers and lifeguards and seagoing people, it brings people down to earth, and it creates a kind of balanced approach amongst people. I put that slide in to just show how heavy the sea can be out at sea, and one constantly reminded of the force of the waves. This is a chart that you have on the bridge wing of all ships, so everyone's living in that kind of understanding. Not only when you're at sea, not only are you at the mercy of the waves and the power of the sea, but you're also surrounded by animals, and they all have a mystical quality once you're far away. And you read about this in literature. Two examples are Moby Dick by Herman Melville, where there's a strong interaction between the sailors and a strong mutual respect between them and the whales they're hunting, and a lot of interest. And you get that same with the birds flying past, same as Coleridge's poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So when you're at sea, there's a strong connection with nature. You can't get away from the fact these things look at you in this strange kind of way. So I'll just put that slide in just to show this kind of mystical side to it all, as well as just being wild animals. I worked in the Navy as a diver, and again, you have to be aware of nature. It's all around you. Sharks are something you have to know about. And then there's just beauty that goes with it all the time. And then a slide to show, this is a Cape Point Nature Reserve where I live in Cape Town, South Africa. And the reserve is where people go and have picnics and so on, but down below the waterline there's another reserve down there that is absolutely full of life, which is explored by divers and so on. When I went and worked as a guide for a year up in Namibia, which is north of South Africa, up in a wilderness area. It was an incredible place. You had this very dramatic mountain range with a river running through it, and then very lush vegetation along the riverbank, which attracted all sorts of animal life. So we used to take people down there on 4-day trails, and our job as guides was to try and make sure that these people from the cities and so on got to the other side, not only in one piece, but also happy and ready to go back home, having had an exciting experience. Can't go into too deeply, but it's not always that easy, and you've got to use nature to make things happen there. It's quite incredible how people change over the 4-day trip and go home kind of ecstatic if you can get things right. But what you do basically is use nature, use the hardships and all that to bring out the best in everybody. And that was the first time we really started to think seriously about nature and our part in it and how important it is. After working as a guide on the Orange River for a year, I then moved back to Durban, to the city, and I sort of thought I'd be a lifeguard for about 6 months, ended up 10 years, 15 years. As you can see, it's quite a wild place. This is New Year's Day. We used to get thousands and thousands of people, got lots of political issues in our country. So there was a lot of crime and violence and things that went with this. So we worked with big crowds on the beachfront, and a lot of social issues, all sorts of abuses and drugs and crime and this kind of thing going on, which became part of our job because we worked with the law enforcement and the social services and all sorts of people. So obviously I was missing nature, and it's quite difficult to see it at first in places like this. But if you look there, you'll see those are tanks from the aquarium, and in one is a whole lot of fish and the other one's a shark. I actually ended up getting a job feeding those fish as a diver, and which was a nice way to be part of nature again. And what I found quite early on is you didn't have to go too far to be part of nature. As we had a wilderness out there in the middle of nowhere, you didn't, just beyond the crowds on the beach, you had another wilderness. And I used to race boards and things and spend a lot of time out there in the sea. And what's quite amazing is right there in the middle of the city, you can have experiences like this of being surrounded by dolphins. Everyone will know as surfers what a powerful experience that can be. But it's important that people can have that experience so close to the cities. I used to do work with various conservation groups, and I also did art for Quicksilver. So when the crossing project came along, I thought it was a great project, and I was pleased to be involved with that. I did a painting for Quicksilver, and I was particularly proud of this. This is a photo of Bruce Raymond, the international president of Quicksilver, with Dennis Hopper at the Waimea ADI Cow contest, and that's my painting on his shirt. So the reason I was proud of that was because if you are trying to be a conservationist, you can often irritate people and bore them, but it's really nice if you are giving out a conservation message and it's going through to the mainstream and going through, forward in good spirit. So this is a photograph by John Pauling of the Tube Masters event at the Bluff near where I stayed in Durban. It's one that everyone knows, probably. It just illustrates that not only is there a romantic side to having the dolphins and things around you, there's also quite a scary side, which is quite a leveling thing, and it's also part of the surfing lifestyle. And I got permission to use that photograph to do a painting, which I entered into the International Competition Wildlife Artist of the Year Award. And it was shortlisted and sold in London with the winning entries for quite a lot of money. But it was a very nice way to link with respected conservationists with these ideas, and also with respected artists. I put this photo in just to illustrate for those people who don't surf how connected people are when they're surfing. That's Twiggy at Dungeons. And anyone can see that anybody in a situation like that has to be very tuned in, not only to the wave around them, but also to all the other side of things like the tides, wind direction, and everything else that goes with it. While I was working as a lifeguard, I met some guides from a group called the Wilderness Leadership School, and I really enjoyed talking to them. Having worked in the wilderness and then lived in the city, it was really nice to connect to people that were linked to the bush. And I had seen that there was a lot of nature in the sea, which was close to town, and I put some ideas forward about running trails through using the sea as a wilderness area. What the Wilderness Leadership School do is they take people on 4 or 5 day trails out into the game reserves, where they're in amongst wild animals. It's a very extreme situation with lions and elephants and so on. So those guides really know what they're doing, and it's a very powerful experience. This was started by Dr. Ian Player, who's a famous conservationist in our country, known for many achievements, but one of being he saved the white rhino from extinction, and he developed the Wilderness Leadership School. And the Wilderness Leadership School it takes potential leaders and future leaders and people from various backgrounds on these wilderness trails, and the whole idea is to get people to appreciate and understand nature, and so that they can have a respect for conservation issues. When he turned 80, I was asked to do a painting for his birthday, and this is the painting here which led to me meeting Dr. Player, and it was a great experience. It was an opportunity to talk about my ideas, and I was given a lot of encouragement for these ideas of developing trail kind of situations using the sea as a wilderness to get that same effect as a conservation issue. So I'm now going to talk briefly about how these marine wilderness ideas were put into practice. I moved down to Cape Town in 2008 and worked for the Save Our Seas Shark Centre as an educator and for the Kelp project, and I developed these ideas with links to the Wilderness Foundation, and I've now developed my own surfers education environmental program. These slides are just slides I've taken from presentations when I was at Save Our Seas to show how education is done. And you see these terrible pictures, which is part of what you have to do as an educator. But there are other ways of doing it as well. And this was a more light-hearted approach called, it was a campaign over 3 days, Oceans Speak Out. Those shells were left on the beach, and each one of those shells had a little recorded message in, so people picked it up and listened, and it told them a little bit about what's going on with ocean conservation and so on. Then there was another one where the bottles washed up, also with a message in. And then on the last day there was a coffin. So I think it was just a kind of, also with a message. So I think it was a nice way to get through to people in a way that's just friendly and easygoing. We had this education program here where we took thousands of kids from all sorts of places. There's a play that was put on for them. And then we did cleanups, which was always a good thing because that's positive action, which the kids respond very well to, and adults as well. But I think it's very important because you want people to be part of the solution and not being part of the problem. So that's very important with the education that I've been doing. This is a photo of a Wavescape Film Festival in Cape Town where we also were present, and SOS was sponsoring that. So that was also getting through to a lot of surfers. And this was a Guinness World attempt at the most surfers on one wave, which we entered, and they did get the record on that occasion. So those are just examples where we were interacting with surfers. My main work was with the education, and we developed these rock pool lessons, which was where I used these wilderness ideas. A lot of the kids that we were dealing with in these outings come from townships and poor backgrounds where they don't get out of nature much. And in our country, one of the issues is that a lot of people have moved into the cities. So a lot of these people living in these townships have come from a rural background, and they really love being out in nature. So as I was saying, you can't really take all these people out on wilderness outings that cost thousands of rand per person, but you can take them down to the shoreline. So my education became about connecting people to nature along the shoreline, just using the small things that live in the rock pools. So you can find all these starfish, anemones, sea urchins, and little fish and things around just in those rocks, which most people wouldn't notice. Put this slide in just to show the group of kids. When I worked in Durban as a lifeguard, often we used to deal with being there a long period of time. You're working with young kids, but during that period the kids are growing up, and obviously you try your best to try and have a decent influence on them, but it doesn't always work. It can be quite a draining process. So I didn't really want to work with that kind of thing when I came to Cape Town, but I ended up with these kids doing education with them, and I actually found it to be an absolutely fantastic thing because even though what we're doing as education isn't going to be a huge thing, it's a small way of putting something, brightening up these people's lives. And I find often when you're dealing with these kids that are from difficult backgrounds, they respond so well, and just a little bit of enthusiasm from you as an educator goes a long way, and they come up and volunteer to do all sorts of things afterwards. So it's very constructive and positive, and it definitely works. I was also working with a kelp project at that stage, making kelp horns, which are these sort of bugle-type things out of kelp. And that was because we had the World Cup in our country in 2010, so this was to making these vuvuzelas. I had a team of guys working with me, which went up to about 24 at one stage. But I also developed an education program using those, the painting process of those kelp horns as a fun thing, and also linking it to the life cycle of kelp. So I was doing an education program with the kids using that. And this is where I brought in those wilderness ideas. Instead of just running the rock pool lessons on the beach close to the Shark Centre, I started taking people into the reserve. And this is just the most incredible place. Those are actually surf breaks along there that are used. And I'll show a slide just now, but you can see you can actually surf there with wild animals walking along the beach. It really is quite a beautiful place. I think any surfer will see that. And taking these kids into there was just a fantastic experience, because it was my first time of really trying these ideas out. And they just responded so strongly. It was really moving, and I'm doing it more and more now. There they're painting kelp. They're having a swim in the pool afterwards. And it's just fantastic. Those kids just don't want to leave at the end of the day. So it just shows, I mean, you really, me as a surfer, I'm just sharing a world that's precious, and we all understand it, with a bunch of kids. And it's very important in our country, because if you want to get anybody to take you seriously, you have to show that you benefited the community and the society as a whole. So that's one way of doing it. Here's a group of adults. I'm not always quite intimidating sometimes, and a bit skeptical. But once they get painting, they can generally, they don't want to leave, and it's the same kind of thing. All the adult groups I've had have been very enthusiastic, and it's very important to reach adults and decision makers as well. So I do look at the ideas of the Wilderness Leadership School and try and apply them to what I'm doing here, which is to really just get decision makers and influential people over onto our side. There's a right break there. It's not really such a good day for surfing, but you can see the animals walking past, and there's Cape Point in the background. I live in Carnegie, which is a famous big wave spot. Just across the way we've got Dungeons, and then there's quite a few other breaks there. One of the famous surfers from that area, Pierre Duplessis, died of a heart attack, not related to surfing, but we had a surf school in his honour, and I did a rock pool lesson. I pitched it in a certain way. I just said, this is part of learning to be a surfer. You've got to learn the Hawaiian traditions of caring for nature, and then nature will care with you, this kind of thing. All went down very well, so I was very excited to be linking all this up. This is actually World Surfing Day, which we did a thing with some kids down in Musenberg. And again, it was just using those ideas with these kids and getting a positive response, just sharing the world that we enjoy as surfers with people from various communities, and just teaching them the importance of it. The other thing was we had a holiday club, which we got a lot of kids coming back time and time again. They'd come and do the initial class, and then every time they had a holiday, they'd come back. So we were able to, and then they were talking about becoming marine biologists and that. So the message does get through to people over a long period of time. Just kids having fun. And I'll just end with that one, because I mean, my whole idea was to try and show that this world that's precious to us as surfers is precious to everybody else. And by taking these kids in there, it's been a wonderful experience, and I think it just shows in those kids' faces. Two paintings that I did also, just of how we as surfers are constantly in touch with nature, the wildlife as well as the forces of the sea, and some plans for the future. I want to develop further in South Africa to encourage awareness and constructive action amongst surfers. I want to try and get reserves made and manage them in this kind of thing. That's a long haul, but we're getting going with it. The education I've developed is been successful in my country. It has a kind of unique pitch, and I'd like to develop that further with anybody that's interested all over the world. And I want to link more with South African and international conservation groups, which is part of being here. This is a fantastic step forward in that. Thank you very much.